How's it going, guys? Welcome to another segment of In This Corner with Travis Hartman. I am proud to have another undefeated up and coming professional boxer on the podcast. We have Jorge Carlos, who is 6-0, five knockouts. And I actually got to be ringside for his fight here in Orlando, Florida, and now have the pleasure of having him on the podcast. First of all, Jorge, congrats on your win and welcome to Weighing In with Travis Hartman. How do you feel after going 6-0?
I felt good. It was my first fight that went the distance. I felt that I needed to have a fight end up going like
Yeah.
end up going like that. Uh, just so I could get that experience. So I think it was good.
Yeah, I mean, what I just from my viewpoint when I was watching, I felt like the guy early on, he was kind of trying to bring it, but I felt like something happened and he kind of felt your power or something because then he stayed away for the rest of the fight. And I feel like he never
Yeah.
really engaged and kind of forced you to have to engage him. So I think in the pros, it's really tough to knock those guys out that don't
Yeah.
open up or engage. And I feel like that's what he did to you in that fight. Do you feel like that's what happened?
Yeah, well, my dad actually had a conversation with him and went over to talk to him. He said that after he realized that he could get knocked out, um, that he didn't really want to risk it anymore
Yeah.
because, I mean, for some people, boxing is their only income. So
Yeah.
that suspension after getting knocked out is just not worth it.
I mean, this kid was 3-0 himself as well. So I'm surprised that he really didn't try to go for it. But that's kind of funny that you said that because that's what it looked like to me just from ringside. I saw that and that's what it kind of looked like. Look at the guy, he engaged for a second, felt your power a little bit, and then he disengaged and kind of just
Yeah,
kept it super safe the rest of the fight. So you brought up a good point. Is your dad your trainer as well?
yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So I've had a couple guys on the podcast. I don't know if you know this kid, Giovanni Marquez. He's from Texas. He's professional now too. He's 140. His dad was Rafael Marquez. He had a big amateur career too. I think he's 7-0 now as a pro. But why I bring it up is his dad coaches him as well. My dad coached me coming up. What's that relationship like having your dad in your corner?
Um, I mean, it's hard,
Yeah.
but I think it's for the best because I don't think I'll find anybody that really knows me like he does. And I mean, he knows how I react to things and what I do best. And uh, I just don't really think anybody else can like have that towards me. And but it's just hard, kind of like splitting the
Yeah.
relationships, like him being your dad and him
Yeah.
being your coach.
So, I mean, that's a great question. Like, I know that I had little rifts, obviously, in training camp and things like that with my father. I had 170 amateur fights, 46 pro fights. So, I got to experience a lot with my dad and my brothers fought too. So, like, that definitely was a tricky relationship. Do you have any I guess any tips for these upcoming guys to navigate that when their father is training them? Do you have any opinions about that? Do you think that's the best for you to have your dad train you? Would you recommend it to other people, or how do you navigate that relationship right now?
I think each scenario is different. I think some people's relationship, with their dads, maybe not be the best. Uh, so in that case, it would be better to seek out like for another coach. But
So, do you think you and your dad you guys are close outside of boxing?
yeah, I think we're close. Yeah, we've we've done good like keeping the relationships like separate.
Yeah. So that brings me another point is you're 23 years old, you're 6-0 with 5 knockouts. How was your amateur career? Because like I told you off the air, I don't know anything about your career, but I know that you had an amateur career because I know a lot of the guys that you're fighting with around there. I think I can't remember what gym it was that you trained at, but I know that Grant Bradshaw, a kid that I know growing up, I fought on a couple national teams as him. I won the national pal over Anthony Durrell, mind you. I beat Anthony Durrell in the finals of national pal. But I think that was a trip that I was with Grant. But what gyms do you train at right now currently?
Right now I train at KCK Pal. It's just like a regular gym. I
Is
have to
Casey
bring in
is
sparring.
KCK who's the coach over there at KCK Pow?
It's more for like there's a couple coaches, but they're more for like kids.
Yeah,
Uh, it's more of like a gym to like bring kids off the streets and
yeah.
put them in a gym and uh free of charge. So
That's cool.
uh
That's what the PAL is. It's the initials PAL. It means Police Athletic League. Did you
yeah.
ever fight in the national PAL as an amateur?
I never did.
You never fought in that. Did you fight in the? How did you do in the Golden Gloves? Did you win the Golden Gloves, or how did you do in nationals? What was your best result as an amateur boxer?
My first year I got runner up, and after that, um,
You got runner up at the national Golden Gloves.
yeah,
That's phenomenal, man. That's a big feat. I mean, I
yeah,
don't think people realize how big like the national golden gloves are, especially nowadays. I feel like there's like a national tournament every weekend. So when somebody says they won nationals, I always ask them what nationals did they win because there's
yeah. Because
only
some
there
people are talking about, yeah,
exactly. And for me, there's only a couple nationals that really matter. And I think National Pal's a big one. I think the gold it used to be a big one. I don't know if it is anymore, but I know the National Golden Gloves was always a big one. So the fact that you
yeah,
made it to the finals there, that's pretty awesome, man. So, but what was your best result? Was that your best result in the National Golden Gloves? Was the finals?
yeah. That was my best run. That
So
was at
now at 141.
114.
Oh, 114. Oh my gosh. Cause
Yeah,
yeah, because you're 140 now. And I remember that the weight classes, did they change them back? Because when I was fighting, it was 141. They took out some of the other weight classes and they merged them
yeah. That
together.
that no, there was 141, and they just did that too. Like I think either last year or 2 years ago. Uh, yeah, they took out 141, made 138. Uh, I think they kept. I think it's 154.
Yeah, I think it was 154, 156. It used to be something like that. So I
Yeah,
guess that's the next question. How many amateur fights did you have? An
over.
estimate doesn't have to have an exact amount.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think over like 150.
Yeah, so you've been fighting a long time. So that's why I wanted to ask this because I remember how I felt. I had 170 amateur fights and I turned pro. What would you say is the difference between your 150 amateur fights to now turning pro? You've had 6 pro fights. I think you've been pro for a couple of years now. So what would you say the difference is right now from amateur to pro in your opinion?
I think the training for sure. I kind of just train to uh last longer, not just high intensity, like fast, a quick like 3 rounds, like
Yeah.
we did in amateurs. Um, because eventually I'm gonna get to like 6, 10 rounds. So I mean that's what I have to train for. Uh, but yeah, I think it's just the training for sure. And like in the amateurs, I could train like not consistently
Yeah.
and still be able to just like take a smoker fight for like
Yeah.
no reason.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you're right. I feel like what it is, it's more of amateur boxing was a sprint. Now you're
Yeah,
kind of getting into pro boxing. It's more of a marathon, essentially. Not yet, because you're still in the 4 rounders, but even in the four
yeah,
rounders, I remember when I turned pro, I did 4 3-minute rounds. my pro debut. But my amateur career, we actually had 2 minute rounds. We were doing 4 2 minute rounds when I was fighting amateur at the time. They
Uh,
pulled it back. I think you were going 3 minute rounds. But we
yeah,
did 4 2s. So that was like, I was like, holy crap, like this is a lot different. I got to train different. I got to train a little bit longer lasting. I can't do this sprint stuff where it's just like you go out there and you just go balls to the wall essentially in an amateur fight. Now in the pros, I felt like you had to kind of set stuff up. You had to methodically break people down a little bit. And again, you're still in the 4 rounders. So that's the
yeah.
next step too. Do you guys know when you're going to step back to like a 6 rounder next? Do you have like anything in mind? Because you have 6-0, you've done 4 rounders. This was your first one that you went 4 rounds because the other one ended by knockout, obviously. But do you have anything in mind that you want to like do next? Is it a 6 rounder? Is it an 8 rounder? Or are you guys going to still stick with the 4 rounders for now?
No, I'm going with 6 my next fight for sure. This fight was actually supposed to be 6, but I was coming off of a year layoff, so um, I just wanted to kind of ease into it a little bit. But yeah, next fight for sure will be 6.
So I'm glad you said that too, because I did notice that on your record that you took about a whole year off. What was the cause of that? Was it more of the business side of boxing, or did you have some stuff going on outside of boxing that kind of you went away from it? Because I mean, you were undefeated and you took a
Yeah.
year off. So what happened there?
Messed up my wrist.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So you're healed and you're doing much better now.
Yeah, it's healed. It's all good now.
Good, man. So also, again, Grant Bradshaw, somebody that I know I grew up with way back in the day. I know that he's been working with you with some strength and conditioning. Can you talk a little bit about that? How he's helped you kind of add some power to your game? Because you are a very good boxer. That's one thing I could notice for sure, was you are a very good boxer. But in the pro game, you do got to kind of develop a little more power because these guys they're coming at you and they're coming to headhunt. So have you noticed anything in your strength and conditioning specifically with Grant Bradshaw?
Yeah, I think with him, the reason I think he's so good is because he comes from a boxing background, so he
Yep.
knows what it's like. So he incorporates different things and different workouts to make me a better boxer. So when we're doing workouts, uh, he'll have me like twist or like turn a different way just to like kind of reenact uh like some sort of boxing movement.
Yeah,
So
I think that's the best when you start working with guys that actually know the sport because there is a lot of
yeah,
personal trainers that never competed themselves. So I think for me, it always made me think twice about it because I'm like, listen, I get it. These guys are qualified. They know what they're talking about, but I do think boxing has different movements and different
yeah,
aspects than other sports. So I think that's kind of good that you're working with Grant in that regard because if you want to progress in the boxing world and the professional ranks, as you're noticing now, you're just going to have to up it a little bit, bring in a couple of other weapons to your arsenal. And hopefully within a year or so, you're knocking these jokers out like the one here that was trying to last. But I think that
yeah,
if you keep doing what you're doing, I think you will be able to get these guys out of there. Even if they're trying to
yeah,
last, I think you're going to learn how to really get those guys out of there. So I
yeah.
don't want to press this issue much on you, but it just, I went over it too fast, but like you said, you slit your wrist. How did you do that?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't slap. Like I just heard him.
You hurt your wrist. I thought
Yeah.
you said you slit your wrist, and I'm just
No,
like, I just kind of glossed over that. That's what I heard. So
no.
for the
Yeah,
listeners, I wanted to make sure they know. So
yeah. No.
you just hurt your wrist, and it was healing. So you were out for an injury, is what happened.
Yeah,
Gotcha. So good
yeah,
thing I cleared that up because it literally sounded like that. So you hurt your wrist. You're back in the game now. So that makes sense. That kind of makes sense for a layoff. A lot of people want to know why undefeated guy takes a layoff. So I mean that's
yeah.
awesome. Did you have any issues after this fight? Did you feel anything bad, good, indifferent after this fight? Did everything feel pretty solid?
No, everything felt good. I'm doing a good job of keeping it pretty secured, so it doesn't get hurt again.
Yeah, right. So I mean, are you guys taking extra precautions like when you're rapping and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, uh, I personally like to have my hand wraps pretty tight. So uh, to keep my just wrist from getting hurt again.
Do you notice now how the wraps are different, obviously, than in the amateur boxing ranks? Do you like it more in the pros than the amateurs, or are you still wrapping him the same?
Uh, well, it's because my dad he wrapped my hands in the amateurs. Um, for the most part, it's the same, but it's just like small adjustments that he's had to make. So like in the pros, the gloves are a lot smaller
A
than
lot, yeah. And there's
yeah,
no padding in the knuckles, really.
yeah, and I have pretty decent sized hands. So like getting my hands to fit with the wraps that he used to do was pretty hard. And it would make my hands sit like very uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And so what he did was he just made it he didn't uh like it's still the same amount of padding,
yeah,
but it's just more compact.
yeah, yeah. He just
So
makes it
it so
a
it
little tighter
fits
now.
better. Huh?
It's just like a little tighter now, then.
Yeah,
Right on.
especially on the knuckle part.
And that just makes it more comfortable for you as because the gloves are a little bit smaller. That's what you're saying. The gloves in the amateur
Yeah,
boxing was a little bigger.
yeah.
I mean, that's very interesting. That's what people, I don't think people realize that the transition from pro or from amateur to pro, there's just a lot of different aspects. For you though, were you still wearing headgear or no headgear in the amateurs? Because I know for a minute they were taking headgears away in some of the tournaments. Did you still wear headgears in the amateurs when you were still fighting?
So yes, but I went to Mexico a couple times to fight, and over there they don't use
Yeah.
headgear. So I got a chance to fight without headgear a couple times over there before I
So
went pro.
were they amateur tournaments or were they just some smoker shows that you decided just to jump on to get some international experience, or how come you guys went down there?
Yeah, it was amateur tournament. It was a tournament.
Right on. So also, I believe, does your brother box as well? Are you the only one in your family that boxes, or do you have, is it a long list of family? Did your father box? How did that go?
No, I don't think. Yeah, nobody else boxes. It's just me and my brother.
Did you have a younger brother then? Is he pro or
Yeah.
is he amateur?
He's actually about to turn pro. He's planning his pro debut this year.
I got you. So do you have anything on the books right now for your next fight? Do you have a manager that's who takes care of your stuff? Do you have a manager that kind of gets you fights? Because that's a good question is how did you get on that card here in Orlando, Florida? I mean, that was a big card. I mean, DAZN broadcasted it. Jake Paul's promotion company was promoting it, Box Lab Promotions as well. So how did you get on a big card like that being all the way from Kansas?
I do have a manager.
So the
Uh,
so the manager's taking care of you. That's good.
yeah,
That's very good.
yeah.
So have you found with boxing? So for me, when I was amateur to pro, I felt like amateur and pro are two different things. I felt like pro became more of a business than actual sport. Have you found that, or is your manager kind of taking that away from you to just let you concentrate on the actual sport part of it, or are you doing both?
Um, he's like they're doing most of the business side. Um, but I still like see it
Yeah,
just because like I'm in the loop and I know what's kind of going on.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it's just different when money is involved. So I think that's the main thing.
Have you gotten used to that? I know that you're only 23 or 6-0. Have you gotten used to the fact that, now that you're fighting literally for money? I mean, you're a professional prize fighter now. So every time you fight, it's for money. It's a business transaction, essentially. Have you gotten used to that fact, or how are you adjusting with that?
Um, yeah,
Do
but
you
no
like
at
it? Do
the
you
same
like it
time.
more or less than the amateur? That like that
Oh, I
that
like
that
it more.
aspect of it.
Yeah, I like it. I like being pro 100%. Like
Yeah.
just a lot more. Uh,
What do you
that
like
was
about it
actually
the
the reason
most?
I went pro is because uh I wanted to start getting paid for it.
Yeah. Is that what do you like the most about being a professional as of right now today? Like I said, you're 6-0, you're 23 years old. You just had a great win on a big platform, but so far up to this point, what's been your most favorite thing about being pro?
I think the like I don't know, it's weird because like it's my favorite part is when I'm like backstage and I'm just about to like walk inside the ring and I turn the corner and there's like a crowd of people, especially here at home. There's I've had a couple fights here, and that's probably been my my favorite part. Is just
That's
seeing the
usually
crowd.
the most nerve-wracking time is like that
Yeah,
moment in the locker room right before you enter the ring. That's usually for me, that's like the most nerve-wracking time because I'm like, it's almost there, but it's
yeah,
not there. It's that wait in the locker room before you go to the ring. I feel like
yeah,
that was the toughest for me. Like
really,
mentally dealing with that, I was just like, once I got out there, it was great. It was fine. But like that
yeah.
moment before you step out there, oh my gosh, dude, that was the hardest for me. That was the most stressed that I was, the most nervous that I was. And so that's a good thing too. I had 170 amateur fights, 46 pro. I was nervous for every single one of them. How have you felt from amateur to pro now? Do you still feel the exact same before you go into the fights, or is it changed a little bit as a pro now? Or is your routine changed? How is your routine from amateur to pro right now? Are you, like I said, are you still the same or has it adjusted a little bit?
Um, my routine stayed the same for the most part. Uh, but I noticed with the pros, I do get a little bit more nervous.
Yeah.
Uh, for some reason, not as much this fight. I don't know if it was just because I wasn't thinking about it as much, but I know my past fights, like when I was in the locker room, I was pretty nervous. And then like I think even more nervous for like the big amateur tournaments, like
Yeah.
even because like I would get pretty nervous for those amateur tournaments as well. Uh, but I think being being pro is I think it's a lot more nerve wracking than the
Yeah.
amateurs.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think in the amateurs, what I didn't realize was in the amateurs that there wasn't when I went to every single tournament, there wasn't a lot on the line necessarily. Meaning like if I lost, then I lost. I didn't want to lose ever, obviously.
Yeah,
But if I lost, I just felt like, you know what, I was pissed off, but it wasn't as big of a deal. But like in the pros, I was like, oh my gosh, like I have to win everything. Like, so
yeah.
I felt like in the pros that what was on the line was a lot more. But I do think the pros are kind of getting away from that. Like, I don't think as much. I don't think that undefeated record is as coveted as it used to be. I think now guys are deciding to fight each other instead of trying to protect their O from the past. Like that the undefeated record meant something in pro boxing. I think now these guys now are just fighting the top guys. So that brings me to my next point. You're in the 140-pound division, brother. That's a big division right now in the professional ranks. I mean, you got guys like Devin Haney, Tifimo Lopez, who's fighting tomorrow, actually Thursday. Um, do you have any kind of aspirations as a pro? You're obviously early in your career. Those guys are farther down the line. Obviously, they're world champions, things like that. But do you have any guy that's at the level right now that you would like to face? Or that you think you can beat, or that you think, or even do you look up to some of those guys? I mean, Tifimo Lopez, Lomachenko, Devin Haney, Shakir Stevenson. I mean, you got all of those guys. Is there any of those guys that you really look up to and just like, you know what, I want to try to make my career like that?
I think one of the guys I look up to is Tank.
Gervonta Davis. Yeah.
Yeah, I've always liked how he fights. Uh, every time, every time he steps in the ring, I don't know. It's just like his world. He he owns it. So I really look up to him as a boxer.
So did you know it's right now it's rumored that he's going to fight Connor Ben? who actually just fought at the Carib Royale 2 fights ago, and I was there for that one. I saw Conor Benn fight ringside. So Conor Benn's bigger. He's like 147, 154. But
Oh,
Gervonta Davis and him are going back and forth, and Eddie Hearn just made an offer out, or is gonna make an offer for Gervonta to fight Conor Benn, which is kind of crazy. It's the weight classes are just like so far apart. But it's funny you mentioned that because that's literally just unraveled and it's happening like right now that they're trying to make that fight happen with Conor Benn.
yeah, I did not hear about that.
Yeah. What do you know? Do you know much about Conor Benn, or have you?
No.
So yeah, so Conor Benn's from the UK and he's been campaigning over here in America now, but he's a big dude. He's like 154, 147, and Gervonta's 135. But
Yeah,
Gervonta, he wants it. He want all the smoke. He's like, I'll take that.
yeah.
He's like, I'll fight Conor Benn. So we'll see how that plays out. But that's down the road, obviously, too, for sure. But so in the amateurs, since you had such a long amateur career, did you face any amateurs that are now professional boxers that are really good, or any notable amateurs that you beat or that you faced in the amateurs that are now, well-renowned pros? Did you face any of those guys?
Um, I beat a couple actually.
Yeah. Tell the
What's
world about it. I want to hear it.
uh, Sean Garcia,
Okay.
uh, Amato Vargas. I think that's his name. Uh,
Is that one of the Fernando Vargas's sons?
yeah, it's the one with the tattoo on his neck.
And he's professional, right? He's undefeated pro, right?
Yeah, he's I think he's the middle the middle child.
And you beat him in the amateurs.
Yeah.
Are you guys still in the same weight class as pros now?
I actually don't know. I don't know what he fights at. I think it's like 130 or 135. I want to say it's 135, but I mean, I've made 135 before.
So are you planning? I know that you've weighed 140 for most of your fights, 139, I think, for this last fight. Are you
Yeah.
planning to stay at 145, or do you have any interest in going down to 35 or going back or going up to 47? Because I know that you actually have really good height. So I do think somewhere in your career, you are going to be okay to go up because you do have good
Yeah.
height for that. But what are you guys planning at right now? Are you just going to hover right there at 140, or do you have any plans to go down to 35?
I think the plan right now is to just kind of stay at 140, and not get any bigger. Because if I get any bigger, I won't be able to make 135.
Yeah.
Uh, but I still want that on the table. I mean, just in case the right opportunity comes, I can make it. Uh, but yeah, I'm just staying comfortable at 140. I don't plan on going up anytime soon. But maybe sometime in the future.
I mean, I'm going to throw this out there at you. What if, let's just say 2 years down the road, let's just foresee this. You are 20-0, okay? 20-0. You are the number one challenger to Gervonta Davis. What would that be like? Can you envision the fact that if you ever got to fight Gervonta Davis, let's say at 135, let's just say 140 even, because by then he might be moved up. What would that be like a dream fantasy matchup? A guy that you looked up to as a pro, and now you're pro. I mean, this is something real. This is something that you need to think about because it could happen. How does that envision in your mind the fact that you could possibly face a guy like Gervonta Davis down the road?
I think something like that is it'd be crazy. I mean, yeah, it's just that'd be a crazy opportunity. I feel like being in that ring, I would like get that feeling of kind of being outside your body because you don't
Yeah.
like even believe it's real. I think it'd be that crazy. But yeah, hopefully one day in the future.
There you go. So that's what I want to put out there, man. I want you to start putting stuff out there like that. Like that's not as crazy as you think it is. You got to
Mm,
start dreaming like that. You got to start putting things out there like that. You got to be like, you know what? Like that's where I want to be one day. I want to be fighting for a title against a guy that I looked up to at one time because you're there now. You're a professional boxer now. You're in the professional ranks. You're 6-0, undefeated 140 pounder. It's not out of the question that a couple years down the road that you won't be on that scene. So you need to start thinking about that stuff and start envisioning things like that, because I do believe that your thoughts turn into actions. And I do think that you're capable of being on that scene. And why I say that is because you had a very long amateur career. And I love that, because I think a lot of fighters refine their talent and refine their boxing game in the amateurs, and they turn pro and just catapult to another level. So I'm super happy to know that you actually had a very long amateur career, because you got a lot of your experience out of the way there, man.
Yeah.
Especially nowadays when you see a lot of guys like the YouTubers jumping and just turning pro all of a sudden. Those guys are a flash in the pan. They will go away. But a guy who has a solid background in boxing, which is your amateur career, I think that you have a bright future going forward, 100%. So there's one thing that I always love to do on my podcast. And if it's not up your alley, it's not up your alley. It's fine. But I am a big believer in God. I believe that everything that happened to me was because of God. I'm from small town Missouri, man. I'm actually the population of the town that I grew up in was 400 people. Okay. And then I went on to fight at Madison Square Garden. I fought all over the
What?
world. I fought in Denmark. I fought in Germany. I fought in France. Like, and I came from Osborne, Missouri is where the place is at.
Oh,
It's
Osborne.
tiny. I don't think anybody's ever heard of it. Nobody that I've ever not talked to has heard of it, but that's where I came from, was Osborne, Missouri. So
Yeah.
that's why I love doing what I do now, because I just think boxing can change lives, and
Yeah.
it's a really cool place, and you're in a really cool place, man. You're 23 years old. You have the whole world ahead of you. But do the right things now. Because later on, I hope to have you back on this podcast in 2, 3, 5 years. It doesn't matter. Don't rush it. But I would love to have you back on here talking about how you wanted to fight Tank Davis, and all of a sudden you're fighting Tank Davis now. Like, how cool would that be, man? Like, we just
Yeah.
envisioned this. Like, I hope that happens, because we talked about it here. So you got to come back on the show and we'll talk about it again. But so I want to know, do you have a belief in God? What is your belief in God? Are you just how do you go about your stuff like that? Are you spiritual at all? Or are you agnostic? How do you go about that?
Um, yeah, I didn't really grow up in a religious household, but I am a believer. Uh,
I love that. Thank you.
yeah, I just don't really practice as much as I should, and that's just something I need to work on.
Listen, brother, I am a huge believer, but I also believe that I don't practice it enough too. Our lives get busy. We don't go to church. We don't do things like that. But what you need to
Yeah.
know is you don't have to go to church to be a believer and accept God into your life. So you still, as long as you believe and know that what you're doing, is God given, I think that's definitely a positive thing. But I know that when I put God first, man, everything else just fell into place. And I mean that. Like, even when things were looking down, all of that, I just know that when I put God first, my life changed 100%. And it still has. Like I said, I'm from middle of nowhere, Missouri. I wasn't supposed to do what I did. And you're right next to where I grew up. You're an hour away from where I grew up. So, you don't know a lot of boxers that come from Kansas or Missouri. So I think it's cool what you're doing, but I do think that you have a bright future, man. Keep God first, 100%. I love having you on the show. Thank you so much for coming. I know this wasn't crazy long, but I'll have you back for sure. But do you want to leave any of your fans, any of your people with anything left at the very end of this? Do you want to leave them with anything to say?
Um, like something motivational.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, no, anything you want to say right now. Like,
Oh,
the floor is yours. It could be motivational for sure. Like, you can inspire some people around you, because what you don't realize is you're only 23, but there's a lot of guys around you that you don't know this, but they're looking up to you. There's a lot of guys that are even older than you that are looking up to what you're doing. You're chasing your dream, man. A lot of
yeah.
people don't get that opportunity to chase their dreams. So, do you have anything that you want to leave everybody with right now?
Um, I think one of the reasons I'm at where like I'm at the point uh of my life is because I didn't listen to the naysayers. Um like all the people that don't believe in you, say you can't do it. Um, you just have to tune them out. There was a lot of people uh, growing up that said I wasn't good, uh, but I never listened to them. So I think a big reason I'm here is because I didn't listen to them.
Hell yeah, man. I mean, think about it. I'm a skinny white kid from the middle of
Yeah,
nowhere, Missouri. Do you think people told me that I was going to be something? Never. They never
yeah,
did. So I'm glad to hear that, man. Seriously. And I love the fact that your dad's in your corner too, because at the end of the day, my father was in my corner for my first ever amateur boxing match. He was in my corner for my last pro fight. I'm not officially retired yet, but I pretty much am. But he was in my corner in my last professional fight as well. But what I loved about having him was that he truly cared about my safety. And that was the biggest thing for me because I fought some of the best in the world. I fought Terrence Crawford. I fought Keith Thurman. I fought Chavez Jr. I fought a lot of really top notch guys. But at the end of the day, I knew that I was going to be safe because I had my dad in my corner. He didn't care about the rest of the stuff. He wanted me to succeed, obviously. But at the end of the
yeah.
day, he wanted to make sure I was safe. And that is something you can't buy. And that is something you can't find very often. So I hope that you keep with your dad, and I hope that you guys keep progressing the way you are. I'm definitely going to keep checking in with you guys, man. But I love I love that you came on weighing in with Travis Hartman. I appreciate it. We'll touch base again for sure, man. But congratulations, 6-0, Jorge Carlos from Olathe, Kansas. 6-0, 5 knockouts. Thanks a lot, brother, for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.